Hi guys, I'm Priyanshi and I'm a CA final student. I'm also currently working. So in my previous video, I spoke about why everyone needs to learn accounting, and that includes science students or humanities students who are not studying commerce or who are not learning accounting in school and college. And it is also for those who are currently learning accountancy but are not sure about the practical usage. So I have the video linked right over here or here, so you can check it out to understand why you need to learn accounting if you're not sure why. So moving to this video, I thought of doing a video on how you can get started, right? Because I spoke about the uses of accounting and why everybody needs to learn it. So I thought I'll do a video on how you can get started with accountancy. Now, accountancy is a little complicated subject and most commerce students find it really difficult. And it is a challenging subject. So in this video, I talk about 6 steps using which you can get started with accountancy and learn accounting if you're a beginner. So during the videos, I do mention few terms and few basic terms in accounting. So if you're not aware of these terms, that's completely alright. My only intention to use these terms is so that I can give you some examples of how you can use each of these steps. So once you start doing these steps, and let's say you are at step 5 and you get stuck, you can always come back to this video and see what examples I have given here so that it will be helpful for you. So do watch it till the end so that you can know all the 6 steps, and I explain how you can use each step. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram. I'll link it below in the description. So if you talk to any commerce student, they will mention accountancy being the most tough subject from the list of subjects that they have. And this happens with a lot of us, and even when I was studying accountancy, I found it to be a little difficult in the beginning because it is a completely new subject and it's a completely different perspective. But the great thing about accountancy is that you can look at its practical applications and understand it with practical examples. So the first thing you need to do when you start learning accountancy is to start with basic terms. Now, even as a commerce student, we start by learning basic terminologies because the terms are very different and it is very specific to accountancy. So what you can do is you can take out any income statement or balance sheet. Now, these are financial statements of a company, and if you just Google financial statements of any company, you will find a balance sheet or an income statement. So what you do here is you start by making your balance sheet and your income statement as a base. And I know for some of you who are not aware of these terms may find it a little difficult to understand at this point. But what I'm saying is just think of it as any document that you have opened online, right? So when you think of it as a document that you've opened online, what you need to do is step by step read each word that is written in the balance sheet or in the income statement. You can start with any. I think I would suggest starting with the balance sheet. But I think either way is fine, even if you start with the income statement. So what you can do is just think of it as a document that you have come across and go line by line. So what you will notice is that there are a list of terms that are written there. And you may not be familiar with all the terms, but there will be some terms you may be familiar with. So let's say you pick up a balance sheet and you start with the asset side, okay? So the balance sheet is divided into liabilities and assets. So that's the broad classification. You can start with any of these. Now, under this classification, there are many sub-classifications and subcategories. So what you can do is start with any of these sides and start by going through each term. So for example, if I start with assets, the first term may be non-current assets. So what do I do next? I first try to understand what non-current assets mean. So what I'll do is I will maybe Google about it, or you can also refer a textbook from a commerce friend of yours, and you can see what non-current assets mean or what assets mean. Now, I think most of you will have a broad idea of what assets and liabilities mean. So what you can do is you can just go through each term, try to understand the definition of each term because it is simple once you understand the definition, and the definition is pretty simple. So if you just Google what is a non-current asset, you will find a definition for it and you will be able to understand what it means, at least broadly. So then I would move to the next terms, and that's how I would start with accountancy. Now, the reason why I'm asking you to start straight away with the balance sheet, even though it is like the end product in the process of accounting, is because you guys are not going to go deep into accountancy. If you're a commerce student and if you're going to pursue a profession in accounting, then definitely you need to learn from the basics from the beginning, which is from the whole accounting process. But if you're somebody who just wants to use accounting and the practical applications of accounting in your daily life when it comes to your personal finances, or if you're starting your own business, then you can start by just understanding the basic terms, and you can keep the balance sheet just as a starting point. Now, I'm not telling you to analyze the whole balance sheet. The first step is just to understand the basic terms. Think of balance sheet as a summary of all the terms you need to understand. So once you start understanding each of these terms, you will be able to get a broader perspective on what accounting is and what the balance sheet means, because that is enough at this point. So this may sound a little complicated, but it does get easier once you look at the balance sheet and the income statement. And what you can do is don't cram it up in one day. So even though it is a list of items that you need to tick off in a way to understand each of these, don't do it in one day. Do it in tranches. So that would be the second thing that you need to do. Do it in tranches. So today maybe just understand 2 terms, and tomorrow understand 3 more terms. So something like that. Okay, so don't do it all at once, because then it could be really confusing. And even commerce students, when they are learning accountancy, we don't start off like that. We just start by understanding few basic terms. So that's the approach you can use. So that would be the second tip, to learn it in tranches. Don't cram it up all in one day. So the third thing you can do is, whatever basic terms you came across in the first step, right, where you were going through your balance sheet and income statement, try correlating those things to your daily life. Now, one such example is, if I'm, let's say, trying to understand what a current asset is, or what an asset is, just forget current or non-current, just what an asset is, I would try to correlate it with my life and see what my asset could be, or what my mom and dad's assets could be. So something like that, anything that you can relate to from your daily life, because it is something which you can apply to your own life. And let's say I'm talking about the income statement, and the income statement has 2 main components, expenses and income. So I can think of my expenses, my day-to-day expenses, or my monthly expenses, or my annual expenses. I could also think of my monthly income or my annual income. So that's something, when you start correlating the terms that you have learned to your life, and you start taking examples from your life, that would really help you to understand it better, and then it would come naturally to you. So that's the third thing you need to do. So make sure you have spent enough time in these first 3 steps that I'm talking about. And the second step itself says that, you have to divide it into tranches. So this is like a step 2, right? So make sure you spend enough time on this before moving on to the next steps that I'm going to talk about. Make sure that you've understood each and every term that is there in your balance sheet and income statement. Even if you don't have an in-depth understanding, make sure that at least broadly you have understood what each of that means. Because slowly, when you start looking at it again and again over a period of time, you will start understanding what each of that means, and start reading more about it. There are a lot of websites where you can read about it. There are also a lot of books. The best resource, according to me, and the easiest resource, would be taking any 11th standard accountancy textbook, right? One such recommendation from my side would be T.S. Grewal. I also recommend it to my students who are studying commerce full-time in 11th and 12th. So if you're a science student, you can definitely borrow a book, 11th standard book from your friends, because 11th standard is where accountancy is also introduced in most schools and in most boards. So in that textbook, 11th standard, T.S. Grewal, it has a lot of introduction to accounting, and it has all these terms that I'm talking about. So what you could do is ideally go online and just see a balance sheet and an income statement, borrow a 11th grade T.S. Grewal book from a friend, or you can buy it or arrange it. I would suggest you can just borrow it, because you won't be using the entire book. It's just to understand the basics. So you can borrow that book, and then each term that is written in the balance sheet, you can start by looking for those terms in that textbook, which will be mentioned in the first 1, 2, 3 chapters. So, and if you don't find a term there, because sometimes the balance sheet does have some complicated terms, you can just Google it, and Investopedia has great definitions for these terms. So Investopedia is a site where you can definitely look for these terms. So once you've understood the basics of these terms and you've read about it online, on Investopedia and other reliable websites. So Investopedia, I think, is a great way to start, because that gives you examples also, and you can go through those terms, and it's a reliable website, so it has good information. So you can go through that, and once you've understood it completely, or at least have a basic understanding, is when you should move to the next few steps that I'm going to talk about. So the fourth step is trying to do a little bit of self-analysis. Now what that means is when you're looking at the balance sheet, once you've understood all the terms, just try to think what sense can you make out of it. So just try to see what you can understand, right? So here in the first step, we were just talking about each term. But now you need to look at the balance sheet as a whole, or you need to look at the income statement as a whole. So when you're looking at it as a whole, the analysis that you derive out of it would be different from when you are, specifically understanding each term. Because in the first step, our agenda was just to understand all the terms. Now, in the fourth step is where we start looking at it as a whole on an overall basis and try to derive some meaning out of it. So you can just think that, okay, if my expenses are so much and my income is so much, then what could be my profit be, or what is my net income, right? So those are few things you can think about, just basic, very, very basic analysis, whatever you can think of, and just maybe note it down somewhere to see what you've understood. So this is just to understand what you have understood so far on an overall basis, because to get that overall clarity is really important. So you can just think that, okay, my fixed assets are more than my current assets, or my non-current assets are higher than this. So you can just make basic analysis as what is higher than what, and you can think of what that means. So one such example could be related to fixed and current assets, or related to liquidity. Now, what does liquid asset mean? Liquid asset is any asset that can be converted into cash quickly, or that can be converted into money quickly. So for example, any property that you may have, or a house that you may have, is not something you can convert into cash immediately. It can be sold only over a period of time, and it takes time to, convert these assets into cash. Now, similarly, there are assets that can be converted into cash easily. One such example is your stocks. You can easily liquidate them whenever you want. So I'm talking about the share market, right? So any shares that you own, you can sell it off on any day during the trading period, and you will be able to convert it quickly into cash. So that could be an example of your current assets. So this is just to explain. So this is just one aspect of, how you can analyze your balance sheet. So this is where you need to start. You can just start by saying simple things like what is higher, what is lower, and what you think it means. So let's say that I'm saying that I don't have as many liquid assets. That means that in cases of emergency, I may not be able to quickly convert my assets into cash. So I should have some amount of current assets as well, so that if there is an emergency, I can quickly convert it into cash and utilize it. So you can think of this from your perspective also, and at a personal level as well, and not just at a business level. So then you will be able to relate to it more. So the fifth step is using different tools of analysis. Now in the fourth step, you were just doing some self-analysis where you were thinking what those terms mean to you, and on an overall basis what analysis you can write. Now in the fifth step, what we do is we'll start learning some tools of analysis, right? Now there are a lot of tools of analysis for financial statements. One such tool which is always used is ratio analysis, and this is a great way to start understanding what your balance sheet means, or what your numbers in your balance sheet and income statement are telling you. So ratio analysis is a really important topic. Most commerce students learn it in the 12th grade, and in 12th, from exam perspective, it is a very simple topic, but I always tell my students that it is a very important topic, so spend enough time on it to understand, and don't just mug up the formulas. So obviously, I would apply the same tip for you. Start by just Googling ratio analysis or financial ratios, and just read about the ratios. Try to understand the different ratios that are available. If you want to refer a textbook, you can refer the 12th grade T.S. Grewal for this particular chapter. Now the 12th grade T.S. Grewal has 3 parts. So one of the parts has financial tool analysis or tools of analysis, and the chapter name over there is ratio analysis. So you can borrow a book from your friend and definitely read up, and these ratio analysis will also be available online, so you can just Google it out as well if you don't have the book with you. So in this chapter, there are different kinds of ratios: liquidity ratios, activity ratios, turnaround ratios. So when you go through these ratios, you will understand how to analyze the balance sheet, or how to understand what the balance sheet means. Because understanding the income statement and the balance sheet is the main part for you guys, because you just want to know the practical applications, right? So once you're able to understand these things, you will be able to use the practical sides of accounting. So just start by understanding the ratio analysis, understand what the numerator denominator means, and most science students are great at math. So I think this wouldn't be a challenge for you guys once you understand the terms. So you will be able to analyze what those numbers mean, what those ratios are telling you, right? So this would be a great way to start understanding more and more of accounting. So before I move to the final step, I just want to summarize the first 5 steps. The first thing is where you learn each term, basics of each term, right? And you keep balance sheet as a base and go through all of the terms, understand those terms. Second thing is, don't do it all together in one day, do it in tranches. Third thing is to correlate whatever you have learned with practical examples from your life, right? That would help you relate to the subject more. The fourth thing would be to understand the meaning of the balance sheet as a whole and try to do some self-analysis. The fifth thing would be to start learning some tools of analysis, and one such great tool is ratio analysis. There are plenty of ratios, so just that is a huge chapter to cover or a huge topic to cover. So you can spend enough time on that. Once you've done all of this, then what you can do is move to the step 6, where you read the annual report of a company. So if you type annual report for any public company or any listed company listed in the stock market, you will be able to find the annual report because it is available to the public. Once you go to the annual report, there will be an index section in the annual report, and there will be a financial statement section in the annual report along with notes to accounts. Now, notes to accounts basically tell you what each of the items in the balance sheet contain. For example, I may have plenty of fixed assets. So my balance sheet will just say fixed assets and the total of fixed assets. But if I want to know the breakup and actually how many machines do I have or how many properties do I have and etc., what I can do is I can go to the notes to accounts, and the notes to accounts will explain what all things are contained in the fixed assets. And that's applicable to all of the items in the balance sheet and in the income statement. And the income statement is also known as profit or loss statement, right? Because the income statement is used to understand whether the company is in profit or in loss, right? So these are things you can definitely go through. So like I said, go to the financial statement section, and that will also have the notes to account section. You can start going through that. So that would be the balance sheet of a real company, and you can start by just understanding, just start by noting down what you can understand. So these are just few things that you can do, and obviously the ultimate thing would be to completely read the annual report or the financial report of the company. But you can definitely start by just reading the balance sheet and income statement part, and slowly you can start reading the notes to accounts part, because the notes to accounts are a detailed version of what each of those things contain, right? So, but if you can read the notes to accounts, it will give you a lot more insights, and you will come across a lot more terms, and whichever terms you come across, you can note it down and, Google about it and learn more about it. So, it's like saying that as kids, when we used to read a storybook, if we used to come across any term that is new to us, our teachers and parents would advise us to underline that term and then go and look for that term in the dictionary. So that's what you need to do with accountancy when you're going through your balance sheet and income statement, and when you're going through the financial report. So I hope these tips were useful. Don't rush into any of these things. It takes time. It is a different subject. It's a whole subject. So there are a lot of things to it, a lot of aspects to it, but these are some of the ways you can get started, because once you start doing these things, then it will come more naturally to you. So spend good enough time on each of these steps, and you can always let me know if you have any doubts or if you're getting stuck anywhere. I would really be very happy to help. You can comment down below about your questions, and you can also DM me on my Instagram. I'll link it below in the description. So share this video with all your science friends and humanities friends who have not learned accounting but want to learn accounting. And you can also share this with your commerce friends, because a lot of times we forget about the practical applications, and a lot of times we just do it because we have it as a subject in school and we just learn it for the sake of it. But I don't want that. So I want people to understand the practical applications, because it can be a really useful thing for them. So do share it with all of your friends. Thank you so much for watching.